Now, so we'll give a few minutes for everybody to jump on here. And what was I saying here? Oh, give me a few minutes to get set up. I'm trying to get logged in here so I can make sure I see all the chats, get them answered. While there we go. Now we're getting there. While we're getting going, sorry, get distracted easily. While we're getting going here, I'll just kind of give the disclaimers that I normally do, and that is, this is a weekly live broadcast. I do this pretty much every week unless, life gets in the way. Last week, life did get in the way. I wasn't able to do that, so we'll talk about that here in a minute, though. But this week, we're back on track. This is pretty much just an Ask Me Anything session. I don't do any kind of preparation. I don't have anything planned. So ask me any questions you want to ask me. I'll do my best to answer them. Keep it family friendly. This is your only warning. If you do get rude or vulgar or any of those things, we will kick you out. So don't do that. That's all I ask. Keep it family friendly. Other than that, ask me whatever you want to ask. I do my best to respond to every single chat. So got a couple of people in here already. Little Gladiator is here, and Jay likes jam. And let's see. Little Gladiator says, what is a good hatch rate? Well, I guess that depends on what it's up to you to kind of decide that. I really consider anything over about 60% a pretty good hatch rate. I usually get somewhere around 75 to 85%, sometimes up as high as 95%. But anywhere around, like I said, 60% or more is a pretty good hatch rate. I would be pretty happy with that. Hey, Walt's here tonight. Good evening, Walt. And Robert Hermson and Denise Scobie, hello to you. Jay likes jams. There we go. Says, what do you do with the rabbits you process? Well, I eat them. Initially they get chilled in the fridge usually for about a day and a half, 2 days, something like that, until the rigor mortis leaves, until they're no longer stiff, and then they go in a vacuum sealed bag, vacuum sealed into the freezer, and then we just cook them up whenever we want them. So that's what I do with them. And who's this? Hi, that's the username. Hi, says hello. Hello to you, Chase Johnson. How long can you leave hatched quail in the incubator? Good question. Usually, they can go up to about 48, I can actually go up to 72 hours. I like to move them out after about the first batch. What I typically do when the first ones hatch, I leave them in there for at least 24, usually 48 hours. But it just depends. Sometimes, between 24 to 48 hours. So usually it's probably somewhere closer to like 35 hours, something like that. And then make sure they're all dry and fluffy. None of them are still wet. And I remove those from the incubator. I might add some more water at that point if I need to, close it back up, and then let the others hatch. And then I usually remove them after about 24 hours each. Every 24 hours, I'll usually get a bunch more hatch, and then 24 hours after that, I'll remove the ones that have hatched already, add more water if I need to, close it back up, and usually that goes on for a couple of days. So hopefully that kind of answers that question for you. But yeah, they can go up to 72 hours. They have plenty of nutrients in that yolk sac to keep them, completely sustained for 24 to 72 hours, no problem. All right, Sharon Pace, hello to you. Hi, says I have duck eggs hatching next week. Well, good luck on your hatch. I hope it goes well. Jay likes jam says, rabbit is one of my favorite meats besides venison. Yeah, I like rabbit quite a bit too. Rebecca says, how do I winter my Japanese Coturnix? Well, Rebecca, it depends probably a little bit on where you live, but for the most part, they do just fine in the winter. Just give them a windbreak, somewhere where they can get out of the wind, where they don't just have to stand in the wind the whole time. And that's all they really need. The hardest part about winter is really water, because the automatic watering system freezes up. So there's no way to really keep it from freezing up. What I do is I switch over to, I don't have anything in here to show you, but very similar to my feeders. It's like a Tupperware style container. I think they're actually Glad family size, plastic containers with a lid on it. And I cut little holes in the side about as high up as I can, and I just use those for water. I fill them with water, put the lid on. That way the birds don't get in the water and make it all filthy. And then I have to fill that up a couple of times a day when it's below freezing. But that's how I handle them. But they do just fine in the winter. They handle the cold just fine. Actually, a little better probably than they do the heat of summer. All right. Pondums Outdoors says, I sprayed my quail eggs with the solution you use, and my hatch rate definitely improved. Good. Yeah, that's the 50% Listerine, just gold Listerine, 50% water. It does a fantastic job of killing off bacteria. Really helps with your hatch rates too. So I'm glad to hear that. Good. I'm glad your hatch rate improved. And let's see, Walt says, depends on how bad cold your winter is. Good point, Walt, it does. But, you know, I've had people report to me from, I mean, way up north where it gets way colder than here, that their birds do just fine in the wintertime as well. So it's not really a big concern, the cold. All right, Robert says, I have a New Zealand white male and a black female. What do you think the color mix will be? Boy, who knows? Probably more dark colors than white. I believe that white is a recessive gene, and I believe black is the dominant gene, but you might get a mix of colors. You might get reds and browns and who knows, but more than likely, most of them are probably going to be black. That would be my guess. Hi says, I got to go, Chris. Bye. Well, hey, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it, and have a good evening. Let's see, Squatched in Alabama says, howdy to everybody. And Jesus Torres says, how can I remove infection bombfoot, I think it means bumblefoot, from quail feet? Also, it's that affect eggs or meat from quail tanks. Okay, I think what you're asking is, how do you get bumblefoot cured in quail? How do you remove the infection? And is that going to affect the eggs and the meat in the quail? Well, if it's a really bad infection, it could affect the meat, but chances are the bird's going to be dying from that infection before it really affects the meat that much. It's not generally a big concern with that. It's not going to affect the eggs. You don't have to worry about those either. The way I did a video on it just a couple, I don't know, a week or two ago. The way you treat bumblefoot, you think of it like getting a splinter in your hand and you never remove the splinter. It's going to get infected. And the first thing you need to do is get that splinter out. So whatever it is that's in the foot that's causing the infection, you need to get that out. It's probably a grain of sand, a splinter, who knows? It could be any number of different things. Whatever it is, you need to get that out, remove the scab that's on the pad of their foot, and almost like squeezing a pimple, getting the core out of a pimple, something like that. You're going to get the core out of that infection. And then you just treat it with an antibiotic ointment. Don't use one that has pain reliever in it. Anything that ends in cane, like lidocaine or, well, that's the only one I can think of right offhand. But anyway, don't use that. Use a regular, just triple antibiotic ointment, no pain relievers in them. And just treat it that way. You can bandage it up if you want to, cover it up and, clean it out real good, add some more, antibiotic ointment to it, maybe once or twice a day, and try to keep it fairly clean, and that should take care of it. Hopefully that helps, Jesus. All right, Little Gladiator says, I'm just getting started with quail. Can you recommend a good place to get eggs from? I always recommend Kansas City Quail Farms. You're going to get fantastic results from them. They've got great selection of eggs, a good mix, so no matter what kind of bird you're looking for, they will probably have those eggs. So they're a great place to go. Rebecca says, tell me about the spray you use on your eggs to incubate. I live in Missouri in the northeast corner. I think it means northeast corner. I'm not making fun of you. I make more typos than that, trust me. We'll see. The spray that I use on quail eggs is a 50% gold Listerine, 50% water. And let's see, do I have it in here? I don't have it in here. I just put it in a little spray bottle. Fill it up halfway with Listerine, the rest of the way with water, and then spray the eggs down as I collect them. And then I spray them down one more time before they go in the incubator. Once they go in the incubator, don't spray them again. Just leave them be at that point. But that does a good job of keeping bacteria down, so you don't have to worry about bacteria taking over and ruining your hatch rate because of that. So hopefully that's enough of a description for you. I did a whole series on improving your hatch rate, I think is what it called. I did like 4 videos on it, and that was one of the things that I discussed in there was, caring for your eggs before you incubate them. But again, once you stick them in the incubator, don't spray them again. Just leave them alone at that point. All right. Is that Janito or Hanito? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right. Clinhans? I'm going to call you Janito. Hopefully I got it right. Says, good evening from Argentina. Well, thanks for joining us all the way from Argentina. That's got to be, pretty late. Well, I guess you're pretty close to the same time zone. It's about an hour difference, I think. All right, Crystal Blue says, my name's David. That's kind of not what I expected, I guess. But it says, I have a bob white quail. The female is sitting on 15 eggs. What should I do if she hatches them? If she hatches them, there's probably not anything you need to do. She will probably take care of them herself. Bob whites do typically do a better job of taking care of and hatching if they will go broody. than Coternics do. So there's probably not much that you need to do. Just make sure she's got food, make sure she's got water, they've got a place to get out of the wind and protect themselves from weather, and they'll probably do just fine. Congratulations on a quail going broody though and sitting on eggs. Hopefully hopefully they hatch. Hopefully she does a good job. Yep, Walt says, considering the fact that birds have down feathers, they are incredibly cold tolerant. Yep, I agree they are. In fact, most animals are actually pretty cold tolerant. I mean, that's, God made them that way. I mean, they're made to live outside, and therefore they tolerate the cold, they tolerate the heat. And I don't think they feel pain like we do. I think it's different for them, but who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. William Chapman says, hello from Alabama, Chris, working on more chicken and turkey coops this weekend. We'll be getting more quail soon. Sounds like you got a lot of work to do. Hopefully it goes well. It's going to be rainy here all weekend. Well, Friday and Saturday, I think it's supposed to rain. I think it's supposed to clear up on Sunday. We'll see. William Safford says, have you heard of anyone feeding split soy to raise protein? I have heard of people feeding soybeans and things to raise the protein levels. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. It should work out pretty well. I can't remember the exact protein ratio of soy though, so I don't know how much you would need to add. I can't remember exactly how much that is, but yeah, it's a good source of protein. All right, Walt says, if she hatches the eggs, consider yourself lucky. Lots of bobwhite are born in the wild without any human help. Yep, absolutely. All right, Caleb says, from Springfield, saw you were in Joplin in the last vid. Cool to know you're close-ish to me. Yeah, Springfield's just right down the road, so we're pretty much neighbors. Thanks for joining in. I might run into you in Springfield sometime. You never know. Jamie says, do you have any advice for how to deal with grain mites in quail food? They come in my last 2 bags of food. Not really. I just don't worry about it. I figure that, I mean, I'm feeding the bags of feed to my quail and they're going to eat the bugs if they want to. I mean, it's not a big deal to me. I don't get very many, problems with bugs in my quail feed, but, when I do, I just don't worry about it. I just throw it in there and let the birds eat it if they want to eat it. Jamie says, do you have any advice on how to deal with, oh, that was the one I just answered, I think. I mean, you could mix some like diatomaceous earth in there, but I don't like to do that. I think diatomaceous earth is really not good for your animals. It's known to, especially, it gets real dusty and it can cause respiratory issues with your birds and things. And I just would avoid using it if I could. Again, I don't think the grain mites are going to be a big issue, so I just wouldn't worry about it. Kinfolk Farmer Georgia says, Chris, thanks again, pal. 3rd batch hatching now, so 37 out of 62. Thanks again for all your help. Never miss a video. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I'm so glad to hear that things are working out well for you. 37 out of 62, not great yet, but I'm guessing that you're waiting on the rest of them to hatch and you've already got 37. So that's not bad. That's pretty good. All right, Robert says, if any viewers are in Virginia, North South Carolina, look into Bartlett Milling Company. They have really good quality quail feed. I have a really good quail feed at 28% protein and good rabbit feed. Well, hey, thanks for the suggestion there. I'm nowhere near North Carolina or South Carolina or Virginia, but yeah, if you've got a local feed mill somewhere, that's the way to go. So much cheaper to buy your feed from a feed mill than it is to buy it from like a feed store that has to ship it in. I get my quail feed, 30% protein quail feed, game bird starter for $13 for a 50-pound bag. And it's good stuff. Works great. So the cheapest I can find it other than them is about $16 for a 50-pound bag. Adjust my camera just a little bit here. Let's take a break real quick from answering questions. I do need to fill everybody in. Well, gonna fill everybody in. If you guys were wondering where I was last week, let's see, not this last Friday, but the Friday before, my wife came home from work and just said, man, my stomach's been bothering me all day. It's hurting up real high. And I said, that sounds like your gallbladder. And she said, oh, I hope not. And I said, well, we got a vacation coming up here in a couple of weeks, so you probably need to go in and see the doctor. Don't want you to be sick during our vacation. She couldn't get into the doctor, went into urgent care, which is, if you don't have that there, it's not the emergency room. It's like it's urgent care set up for things like that where you can't get into the doctor, but it's not, you don't need to go to the emergency room for it. Anyway, They did some blood tests, blood work on her Tuesday. She was feeling pretty good by then, but still, they did some blood tests on her. Then they called us back about 7:30 Tuesday night and said, you need to go to the emergency room. So we went to the emergency room about 8 o'clock Tuesday. And, the doctors came and saw her, did some more blood work on her and said, yeah, it's your gallbladder. You need to have your gallbladder taken out. And they thought they were going to do it that night. So they kept her overnight in the emergency room. They ended up doing the surgery the next afternoon. So it was about 4 o'clock Wednesday afternoon. She had her gallbladder taken out. And then we got out of the hospital. I guess she stayed overnight. They said, you can go home if you want to, but you may be best to stay overnight. She was in a lot of pain that night, so it was best that we stayed there. And then she got released Thursday, but we didn't get home till it was about 6 o'clock. So I just was in no condition to really shoot live broadcast Thursday evening. So sorry I was not here. She's doing well though, so no issues. I mean, so far she's doing pretty good. She went back to work Monday. Went back to work Monday. What is today? Thursday already. Good grief, going by fast. So she went back to work Monday, and she's been doing pretty good. She's got her appetite back, and all in all, things are going well. All right, so Jakir says, hello, Chris. It's been a long time. Hope you're doing well. Could you guess which country or which county I'm messaging you from? Testing your memory. Is that county or country? Okay, it is country. I'm sorry. Apparently, I can't read tonight. Oh boy, is it? I remember the name, Jakir, but I can't remember what country. If I had to guess, I would say it's like a Middle Eastern country, maybe Jordan, something like. I can't remember though. I'm sorry. Jay Likes Jam says, do you really need a permit to have bobwhite quail since they are a native species? Yes, you do need a permit for them. But again, that's going to depend a little bit on your area, whether, how big of a risk it is that you're going to get caught and somebody's going to actually fine you for it. Permits aren't that hard to get, but you do need a permit for bobwhite quail. All right, Lauren says, I have chicken that got attacked by a dog and the whole back is messed up. What medicine can I put on it? Blue coat's probably a good all-around like wound care for animals. That's what I would put on it. You can use like some antibiotic ointments, keep the infections down if there are any. But blue coat, and just go to any kind of local feed store, farm supply store, ask for blue coat. It's like BLUEKOTE, I believe. And it's a good all-around wound care for animals. So that's what I would suggest. Hopefully it recovers. I'm sorry to hear that. All right. Robert says, mix in food grade diatomaceous earth in your feed. I think you're talking about taking care of the beetles. Yeah, you could do that for sure. The mites, the feed mites that we were talking about. You could do that for sure. Like I said, I don't like using diatomaceous earth, but if you want to do it, go for it. Charlotte says, is there a way to know if the eggs are fertile before incubating? Really short of cracking them open and looking at the yolks, there's not really, and of course you couldn't incubate them if you did that. But what I would suggest is before you start saving eggs, get you a bowl and take, I don't know, 8 or 9, 10 eggs, whatever, 5, 6 eggs, I don't know, something like that. Oh, Jakir's from the UK. I was way off. Anyway, take like, 6, 7 eggs, however many, and, just crack them open, dump them in the bowl, and then look. What you're looking for is a mature egg, not necessarily a fertile egg, but a mature egg is going to have a white spot on the yolk. So almost all your eggs will have a white spot on the yolk. All of them should anyway. And what you're looking for, though, is a faint bullseye ring around that white spot. And it's a little bit hard to see, but it's pretty obvious. You'll see, like there's the yolk, and then there's a white spot on the yolk, and then there's just a faint ring around it. That means it's a fertile egg. So that's how you can tell. And just, like if you crack like 6 of them open and 5 of them are fertile and 1 of them's not, well, you got pretty good fertility. Just assume your eggs are fertile, go to incubating them. If you crack 6 of them open, only 1 is fertile, well, you might give them another week or 2 and then try again. That's how I do it. All right, William says, Chris has a video about diatomaceous earth. I did have a video where I talked about diatomaceous earth and why I don't like using it necessarily. It has its place, don't get me wrong. There are times where diatomaceous earth is the thing to use, but again, it's a broad spectrum killer too. I don't like to use broad spectrum killers. There are plenty of beneficial insects and bugs, and you kind of need all that stuff to keep everything in check. And I think once you start using broad spectrum killers and you kill off all your good predator bugs, all that stuff, then you're always going to have a problem because you've just killed off all the predators that keep your other bugs in check. So I think it can make the situation worse as opposed to making it better. Plus, again, the health risks that you have with diatomaceous earth. Make sure you wear a mask or something if you're dealing with it, though. It can be pretty damaging to you as well. All right. Walt says in most states, yes, you need a permit for game birds like bobwhite. Yeah, you wouldn't need permits for coturnix because they're not native to the states. But yeah, native game birds you would need a permit for. All right, Little Gladiator says, have you ever tried to grow fodder for your rabbits? And oh, look at that. DKK gave me a super chat. No, it's not DKK. Who is that? It's Lars. There we go. Lars at 200. What is it? Danish? 200 Danish something super chat. Thank you so much for that. That's like, I don't know, $30, $35 in US money. That's quite a bit of money. It's so generous of you. And he comes back and does that, I don't know, just almost every week you're in here doing that. I'm so very grateful for that. I don't feel like you have to do that, but it is appreciated every time. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. And make sure you didn't even have a question, just throwing money at me for just no reason. Very, very generous, very kind of you. All right, where are we at here? Have you ever tried to grow fodder? Okay, it says, have you ever tried to grow fodder? I think you mean fodder for your rabbits and quail. No, I've never grown fodder. I know how to grow it. It's not terribly hard to do, but I've never done it. It's just a little bit of extra work, and it's just, I mean, I've got a full-time job. I'm busy as it is. I just don't have time to deal with fodder trays every day. It's just pellets are just so much easier. So that's why I deal with it. If you want to grow fodder, though, it's super easy to grow. I mean, you just basically you soak your seeds. You're going to use like a barley or a wheat seed or something like that. You can set up a tray system. If you set them up just right, you can get them to where you pour water in one tray and then it runs through all the trays. So you don't have to water each tray individually. You can do that, and that makes it pretty easy. It takes about 7 days roughly to get fodder from seed to ready to feed to your animals. So if you just start a new tray every day, you've pretty much got, or however many animals you got, you may need to start 2 trays, but you get the idea. You pretty much got just a rotating every day. You're starting a new tray, you're feeding one tray to your rabbits or quail or whatever, and you're rotating them through the system. It's not terribly difficult to do. All right. William Chapman says, Chris, I use spray that you use to clean up after I use the spray that you use to clean up after I use a brooder. I have not had any sickness as of yet. Keep the fingers crossed. Well, good. I hope that things go well. Walt says room temp is fine. I'm not sure what we're answering there. I don't know what chat that was, but Walt's answering it for you. Room temp is fine. Shakir says, I've just finished raising my 4th batch of quail, feeding them turkey starter feed. That's a good feed. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm thinking to switch to special poultry breeder pellets for chickens. I think I'd stick with the turkey starter if it was me. It's pretty much the same thing as game bird starter, and it's probably a higher protein than your special poultry breeder pellets, and it's probably a crumble feed, whereas pellets are a pellet feed. It's going to be a little bit harder for the quail to eat. I would stick with the turkey starter. That's just my opinion, but hey, whatever works for you, go for it. All right, excuse me. Jesse says, 4 batches of ordered eggs hatched with your help. First batch of my own fertile eggs in the incubator. 25 started Tuesday. Thank you for getting me here. Thank you for getting me here. Well, Jesse, thank you so much for watching the videos. I'm so glad to hear that they are proving helpful for you. 4 batches of ordered eggs. You got them hatched. That's fantastic. I'm glad that, I was able to help a little bit, but you're the one that deserves the credit. You're the one that did that. So very good job, and good luck with your 25 eggs that you've got in the incubator now. And Egg and Quail says, good day from Australia. Well, thanks for joining all the way from Australia. That's got to be like, what, midnight, 2 in the morning, something like that? Thanks for staying up late and coming in and joining with us tonight. And then we got some people trying to guess where Jakir is from, which I think we already got the answer to that, though. But okay. Ramiro says, what determines the sex of quail when the egg becomes fertile? Is there a way to increase the likelihood of having one sex over the other? Okay, well, God determines the sex of the quail, but that's not what you're asking. It's, I mean, it's just luck of the draw is really what it is. There's not really a way to ensure that more fertile eggs will be male as opposed to female. But you can, there is some evidence that adjusting your temperature, and I may get this wrong. I did a video on this and talked about it a long time ago. But I think the warmer temperature tends to favor the roosters, whereas a cooler temperature tends to favor hens. It's not going to change the sex of the egg, but what it's going to do is you're going to be more likely for the eggs that are hens to hatch and the ones that are roosters not to hatch at all. So it basically just kills off your birds that aren't the sex that you're looking for, which is not necessarily the best thing, but you can kind of control which ones are going to hatch that way, maybe to a little bit. It's not 100%. It's not like if you, and when we say cooler, we're talking about like 1 degree cooler. 1 degree warmer. I just don't remember which way it is, which way is roosters, which way is hens. And I don't know that it's a good practice to get into. You can really significantly impact your hatch rates and just end up with really bad hatch rates as a result. All right, Jay Likes Jam says, I'm in Pennsylvania. I've never been to Pennsylvania. I have to meet there someday. All right, K-Thomp says, if a rabbit gets stung by a wasp or a bee, would it kill them? I think it probably depends on how many times they got stung, what kind of wasp or bee it was, and specifics of the rabbit itself. Most rabbits should be able to tolerate that okay. I mean, they'll probably swell up pretty good, but it shouldn't kill them. But they can be just like any other animal. I mean, they can have an allergy to it and go into anaphylactic shock and die from it. But it's probably, I mean, I would say most of the time they're going to survive that just fine. I used to have a dog that would chase bees, and he would catch them and it'd sting him on his lips, and then his lips would swell up real big, and it was the funniest thing ever. But he was always fine. He always got over it just fine. Didn't seem to bother him too much. All right, Willie McBurney says, I have 5 roosters together in a cage. I noticed a couple with bald spots on their heads, so I put it down to fighting, but watching them, it is due to them mounting each other. Is this normal? Well, it's not abnormal, especially if you've got young roosters that have just become sexually mature and there's not enough hens. They're like teenagers basically, and they're gonna mount whatever they can find because they've just got too many hormones going through their body right now. So yeah, that's pretty normal behavior. Jakir says, LOL, I'm messaging from the UK. Okay, anyway, what is your opinion on the specialist brooder? Okay, I think I already answered that. The specialist poultry breeder feed, it's 18% protein, but also has a lot more natural vitamins and minerals. I think we already answered that. I think the turkey starter is probably a better option because it probably does have more protein. It should be fine on the other vitamins and minerals. More vitamins and minerals doesn't necessarily mean it's better either. I can't remember the exact requirements for like vitamin E and thiamine. And vitamin B. Those are probably the 3 most important, other than calcium, of course. But like, for example, in quail, they only need about 1.5 to 2% calcium. And if your feed's much higher than that, then it can cause your eggshells to be very thick, and it can actually impact your hatch rates negatively. So, just because it's more doesn't mean it's better. You should probably look up, because I can't remember exactly how much they are, but just look up the, quail requirements for thiamine, quail requirements for vitamin E, for what's the other one I said? Vitamin B. And then you can kind of compare that between your 2 feeds and see. But I'm betting that the turkey starter is probably going to be the better choice. All right. Excuse me while I grab a drink there. It's warm in here. I'm probably starting to shine, starting to sweat a little bit. I've been talking nonstop for a while, about half an hour already. All right, K-Thomp says, how would you get your rabbits ready for winter? Well, I don't do much to get them ready for winter either. Rabbits actually handle winter way better than summer. They've got big fur coats on, and summertime's rough on them, but wintertime's pretty easy. It's pretty much the same thing I say about quail. Just give them a wind block. I pull the tarps down that I've got that hang over. So like, here's my quail hutch. I pull the tarps down like this. So they cover the outside, provide them with a wind block, but it's not right up against the front of the cage. I can still get to the cages. I switch them over to water bowls like Crocs instead of the automatic watering system because it freezes up. and then I just have to replace their water, like knock the ice out and fill them back up with water a couple times a day. That's really all I do for the rabbits in the wintertime. They do just fine, no problems. All right, Conkle City Farm says, hey from Indiana, hello to you, and says, is 30 quail laying eggs plus the housing for $100, is that a good deal? Okay, 30 quail that are laying eggs and the housing for $100, that's a pretty good deal. You know, it depends on it depends on the size of the house, the housing, the cage, the hutch, whatever. But yeah, that's a pretty good deal. You know, my hutch cost me close to $100 to build just for the hutch. And 30 quail laying eggs, those usually go for $4 to $5 a piece. So assume they're $5 a piece. You know, that's $150 worth of quail right there. So yeah, that sounds like a pretty good deal. Bluegrass Homestead says, listening from Kentucky, enjoy your vids. We just got quail and checked your channel for advice. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And hopefully you're finding the videos helpful. I've got lots of old videos. But if you have specific things that need answered, just let me know. I'll do my best to get those answered for you. Jakir says, the feed's really good quality and organic. I'm aiming to get a quail meat and eggs to taste better by feeding them specialist breeder pellets instead of turkey starter crumble. Okay, well, go for it. See if it helps. It may not. I'm not one that buys into, you know, organic being that much better always. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not against organic, but to me, organic just means more expensive. But, you know, I may be wrong on that. If it does help with the taste of the quail, then by all means do it. I'm not so confident that it will make that big of an impact on it, but I could be wrong. Try it out and see. All right, Wald agrees with me. He says 100 for cages. Sounds good. Yeah, it's not just cages, it's cages and birds. So yeah, that sounds pretty good. Little Gladiator says, is there any protein supplement you recommend for raising the protein? Wow, there's a whole bunch of them. I did a video on that like a week or two ago, talked about that. There's a whole bunch of things that you can add to raise protein. If it's, you know, catfish food, that was when I said cat food in the video initially, but some other people came in and said catfish food, and I'm like, yeah, I completely forgot to say that. That's a good option. So you go to like your, you know, local farm supply or whatever, and get catfish food. It's usually like a 30 to 35% protein, and you just grind that up in like a blender or a coffee grinder, you know, something like that. Don't use your like, you know, who was this asking me? Little Gladiator. Okay, I don't know, Little Gladiator, if you're young or if you're older. So, you know, don't use your, you know, your spouse's favorite blender or your parents' favorite blender. You know, don't go in and get the nice blender out of the cabinet and go grinding up catfish food in it. You'll get disowned. But, you know, you can go to any kind of like Goodwill, secondhand stores, any of that kind of stuff, farm, flea markets, and you can usually find like an old coffee grinder or a, you know, an old blender or something like that for just a couple of dollars, and you can use that just solely to blend up your catfish food, your cat food. Those are two good options. You know, mealworms and crickets and those kinds of things are good options too, but they're pretty expensive. They can get pricey pretty quick. All right, Walt is smarter than me in a lot of ways. DKK stands for Danish kroner, means crown. Danish kroner. Okay, I can't ever remember that. I remember that it's Danish, but that's as much as I can remember. Jesse Insulin says, I soak beans for quail food. Interesting. Yeah, I imagine beans would be a good supplement for them too. All right, S. That's the username, just says S. It says, we have 2 older quail, May of 2019, both laying eggs, and 4 younger quail about 9 weeks old. One of the older ones is very aggressive. What can we do to manage it? Well, sometimes you just get an aggressive bird. Now, generally, they will kind of calm down as time goes by. They'll get used to their cage mates. They'll kind of establish a pecking order, and it's usually not a huge issue in the long run. But sometimes they're just mean birds, or you just get an aggressive bird. And what I usually suggest on that is just cull them out. You don't want to pass those genes on to your other birds, but you've only got, you know, what you said, 2 older quail and 4 younger quail. So you may just have to stick with it for a while until you get some eggs out of them, get some birds incubated, get some more birds, and then you can kind of remove the ones that are more aggressive, and that'll help over time. Other than that, there's not a whole lot you can do. They will calm down once the daylight drops down to below about 12 hours a day, and they go into they come out of the breeding season. They'll calm down quite a bit then. Rhonda says, hello, how are you? And the wife doing? I've been MIA for a while. Well, we haven't seen you for a while, Rhonda. We're doing well, though. Thank you for asking, and glad to see you made it back to a live broadcast. Says, my phone didn't tell me you were on tonight until just now. Yeah, I don't know why. That notification icons don't always work and not always that prompt. So, sorry about that. Oh, Walt says room temp is fine for starting mail order eggs. I never saw anybody ask about mail order eggs. Somebody must be blocked. Somebody was here at one time that I think, let's try that. All messages are visible. Uh-oh, I just lost some, where was I? Okay, maybe that fixed it. Okay, so Walt says, yeah. Room temp is fine for starting mail order eggs. And then he goes on to say Kansas City Quail Farms for mail order eggs. Yep, I agree. Bluegrass Homestead says, I use layer feed with a coffee mill. There was no other feed option available at my local store. I hope this is okay. Yeah, it's probably fine. I like a higher protein. I think that the birds do a little bit better on a higher protein. But, feeding them a layer feed is not going to kill them. I mean, they're going to do just fine on that. If it's a crumble already, you probably don't need to crumble it up. But, you never know. Maybe. All right. Robert Hermson says, what is the name of the place that you get your quail from again? Well, most of my quail I raise myself, but my eggs came from my initial flock. My eggs came from Kansas City Quail Farm. They shipped eggs to me, and I hatched them out, and that's where the birds that I have now. Lars says, hi, Chris. I have 40 quail eggs hatching now. Thanks for all the help. Well, thank you, Lars, for watching the videos. Thanks for your generous contributions all the time. And I'm so glad to hear that things are going well for you. Hopefully they keep up. Good job. Carrie says, wow, I need a job like this. I live off of $100 a month. $100 a month. I couldn't imagine living off that. I make a little bit of money off of YouTube, the advertising revenue and those kinds of things. And the super chats like this, it's not enough to live off of. It does help with, the wife's medical bills. I mean, my poor wife has had 5 surgeries in the last year and a half, and they've been expensive surgeries. So it does help, with paying some of the extras and those kinds of things. It's definitely nice, but, that's not the primary reason that I run this channel. I really like interacting with you guys, and that's the primary reason I do that. But $100 in a whole month, I would have to find something else. I don't think I could live off of $100 in a month. All right, Carrie goes on to say, how come my white quail are dying and not any other color? Boy, who knows, Carrie? I'm sorry. I wish I could answer that for you. But, if it's just the white birds, there could be some kind of genetic problem that they have. There is such a thing as a terminal gene that some birds carry, and it just causes them to just suddenly die for whatever reason. So that could be some kind of genetic issue. It could be any number of things. There's no way for me to know for sure, unfortunately. I wish I could give you better advice, but I just don't know. She goes on to say, I'm from the Ozarks, Missouri, and only white quail have been dying from broken legs or something else. Oh, from broken legs. You might check your calcium levels. So if it's, if it's not, they need to be about 2%, 1.5 to 2% calcium. If it's below that or the low end of that, you might raise the calcium level a little bit or give them some calcium on the side. You don't want to mix it in with the feed. You just want to give it free choice on the side. They'll self-regulate how much they need. That might help with that. Low calcium can lead to fragile bones and things that could cause broken legs and those kinds of things that, could be causing some of the issues with that. I wish I had better advice for you, but I mean, there's so many different things that could happen. There's just no way for me to know for sure what it is. Walt says, I think warmer temperatures favor the male, but most inexpensive incubator can hold exactly the right temp. Yeah, I think you may be right on that, Walt. I can't remember if it's warmer for male or warmer for female, one or the other. All right, Carmen Stone says, North Carolina here. I love my quail. Been following you for a while now. Well, thank you so much, Carmen. I appreciate that. Thanks for watching the videos. Jaden Gray says, hey, mate. Well, hello to you. And William Chapman says, Chris, who or where can I find help and information on Bob White? Can't tell male or female yet. If they're standard bob whites, you should be able to tell the males from the females pretty easily. I would say just Google bob white male and bob white female and look at the pictures. They're pretty obvious which ones are the males and which ones are the females, but they may have to be a little bit older before you can tell. As far as finding information on them, I deal with Coturnix quail. I know a little bit about bob white. But, I don't know who to point you to who's an expert on bob white quail. I know Rhonda's raised some bob whites before, but I'm not sure exactly who to point you to who's the expert on bob white quail. To me, they're not as heavy a producers as Coturnix. Well, that's it. That's basically it. They don't grow out as fast and they don't produce nearly as many eggs as Coturnix. So for me, Coturnix is a clear winner, and that's the ones that I choose to raise. I wish I could give you more information on them, but sorry, I just can't. All right, William says, I had $5 in the back of my car and a bag of disc golf discs. The bucks made a musky smell that smelled like marijuana. Really? Don't get pulled over with bucks. When you said $5, I thought money. You had $5 in the back of your car with a bag of disc golf discs. Yeah, they can. They can have a musky kind of smell to them. I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't know that I've ever thought it smelled like marijuana, but maybe. Who knows? But yeah, I guess getting pulled over with that, you'd have more than one question to answer, wouldn't you? I used to, funny story, I used to, when I was younger, like in my early 20s, like 20 to 24, somewhere around in there, I raised snakes for a while, reptiles and amphibians, and really with a focus on snake. And, I had, I don't know, 40 different snakes at one time. But I was transporting I think it was a Burmese python. It was either a Burmese python or a red-tailed boa. I don't remember, but it was a pretty big one. I don't know, 8 to 9 feet long, something like that. So, about that big around. Well, that big around. It was pretty good size. But I had it in a pillowcase. I had it sitting on the seat next to me, and I got pulled over, and the police officer comes up, and he's asking me, what's in that bag over there? And I said, well, it's a python. And so you want me to get it out of the bag? He's like, nope, that's okay. Didn't write me a ticket, just left. I could have been carrying anything. And he never even checked twice. I think he pulled me over because I was going a couple miles over the speed limit. And I was a young, long-haired kid. I had long hair back then, and so I fit a profile. I got pulled over all the time. Rhonda says, I'm going to be sending 30 quail to the freezer camp really soon. That should be 2 meals for my family. 30 quail is 2 meals. Wow. Jaden says, hi, Chris. Hello. Says hi again. Hello again. Carrie says, I bought 100 quail out of 50 whites. After 50 white ones, only 3 left in 2 months. Man, I'm sorry to hear that, Carrie. That's I don't know who you bought them from, but you might go back to whoever you bought them from and check with them on them. There may be some kind of genetic issue. Personally, I found the white quail, I just didn't like them at all. To me, they were just much more aggressive than the browns. I don't like the fact that you can't tell the male from female just by looking at them. So it may be a blessing to disguise in the end, but man, I'm sorry to hear that you're losing birds like that. I wish I could tell you exactly what it was. Walt says, Tractor Supply carries turkey starter. If your TSC doesn't carry, they can order it in. Yep, good point there, Walt, too. And that's another thing. Yeah, if you're having a hard time finding turkey starter, chicken, quail starter, whatever, you go to your feed stores or whoever, and you look around, you don't see it on the shelves. Don't be afraid to ask them. A lot of times they have that available, and they can order it in. And it's free delivery. It just comes right in. I have my rabbit pellets delivered to my feed store because they don't carry I want a higher protein than what they carry on the standard, but it doesn't cost anything. They just have it delivered with the rest of their food, and they just get a bag or 2 of it at a time, and I buy a bag or 2 of them at a time from them. So, all right. All right, Rhonda says, what kind of cat food do you suggest to add to the food? Really any kind of, just a dry cat food. Just look at it, and whichever one's over like 30% protein or whatever, that would be a good one to add to it. William Safford says, Carrie, sounds like your white quail need more vitamins in the water. It will make the chicks and the eggs they lay stronger. Off of the vitamins in the baby water, too, I use polyvisol. That's not a bad suggestion, William. I mean, that may or may not fix it. If it's just the white ones dying, it shouldn't be a vitamin deficiency issue. I'm betting it's more of a genetic issue, but who knows? Try it and see. It may help. All right. Jakir says, can you suggest good supplements for golden egg yolks, better tasting meat, eggs, etc., please? I don't know that I really have good suggestions for that. I would say, if you want really yellow egg yolks, then typically that's going to be, giving them lots of bugs and things like that to eat. I don't know exactly which supplements would be the ones that you would want to add in there. I don't know that it makes a big difference on the flavor of the meat, though. To me, quail always tastes like quail. And I mean, I like quail, so that's not a problem for me, but I don't know what you could do to make the meat taste that much better, honestly. Sorry, I don't have a better suggestion for you, but I would love to be able to help. But you say natural foods such as seeds or nuts. Yeah, usually the golden. I mean, that's a protein, and that's usually an animal protein. So it's going to be like insects and things like that that are going to contribute to more of the yolk color, in my opinion. But I don't know that I'm an expert on that. Walt says any dried cat food will do. Higher protein is better. Rhonda says, Walt, I tried that and mine told me no, which was a little annoying, thinking they were just lazy because it does state online they will order it. Oh, you're talking about Tractor Supply ordering things. Yeah, if they told you no, talk to somebody else there. Get the manager. Don't just talk to the cashier. The cashier's probably, some high school kid that's, first job or something like that. All right, where are we at here? William says, Jakir, if you give seeds and nuts, you need to give grit. Well, that's a good point, William. And Jakir, he's right. If you're going to be feeding a lot of insects or seeds or nuts or any of those kinds of things, you do need to provide grit for the quail. They don't need that if you're feeding them primarily like a crumble or a pellet feed or something like that. But if you do start feeding them like seeds and things like that, they need the grit to be able to grind that food up in their crop. Jesse Insulin, I'm not sure what you're responding to, but you say manage aggressive. Okay, now it makes sense. Manage aggressive males with the freezer. Yeah, that's pretty much my policy too. All right, Walt says, Rhonda, you could order it online and have it shipped to the store rather than having the manager ordering it. That's a good suggestion too. Carrie says, I think my brown quail are killing my white quail. Well, if there's a lot of injuries on them, then that's a different story altogether. Then yeah, it could be your other birds are killing some of your other birds. Now, it may be your brown quail. My opinion or my experience has been the white quails always seem to be more aggressive than the brown quails, but that's not always the case. That's a generalization. So it may be that you have some very aggressive standard brown birds that are killing your white birds, but that should be pretty obvious. I mean, you should see some pretty serious wounds on them, especially around the face. Losing eyes, getting pecked around the head, that kind of stuff. Gary B says, Chris, I'd seen something from you on a timed solar light kit. Is this something available? Not yet. I'm really still working on trying to figure out how to bring that to market. I did a Kickstarter on it because I just don't have the money to put down on the bulk order that I need to. I'd have to order like 1,000 units from them. I can't just order 10 units from the manufacturer. And yeah, it's a solar. I mean, it's what I use on my quail hutches now. I've got the prototypes out there, and they work great. But I tried to run a Kickstarter. The Kickstarter failed. Didn't get enough support. So didn't get the money together to make the bulk order. I'm really working on trying to figure out if I'm going to run another Kickstarter or what I'm going to do to try to get the money to get the initial bulk order made and then make that available for everybody. Hopefully soon I'll be able to do that. All right. Jakir says, I wish I had all the best. Oh, I wish all the best for you and your wife. Hope she gets well soon. Thank you so much, Jakir. I appreciate that. She's doing well. But thank you very much. Walt says, broken legs, check your cage flooring. That's a good suggestion too. Yeah, if you're having many problems with broken legs, then yeah, there may be something wrong with your cage floor that's causing that too. Good suggestion, Walt. Thank you. Carter says, hi, how are you? I'm doing well. Thank you. Little Gladiator says, sending prayers for your wife. What's the best quail for meat? Well, thank you for the prayers. I personally think the best quail for meat is, boy, it's a toss-up between the meat makers and the jumbo pharaohs. They're both pretty good-sized birds, and that's really what you go for, is bigger birds. I don't notice a huge difference between the two, so either one of those I think are probably about the same. Max says, Do those birds you raise taste like Bob Whites? The Coturnix, they're pretty similar to Bob Whites, yeah. Honestly, quail, any quail, is very similar to like dove, probably pigeon. I've never eaten pigeon, but they're basically just a dove anyway. So they're all very, very similar. They taste very close to each other. All right. Judy Lynn says, hello from Pacific Northwest. I love your videos. They have helped me so much. Thank you. I have installed an auto water for my rabbits. Awesome. Thank you for watching. I'm glad you're finding the videos helpful. And the automatic water, I mean, you got to do it if you haven't already. That's such a time saver. It's so much easier. Rhonda says, from what I understand, the males look like they have mascara around their eyes and their heads have more black on them than the females do. Oh, that's a pretty good description. You're talking about how to tell the difference between a male Bob White and a female Bob White. Walt's got a good suggestion. He says, ask Rush Lane Game Birds. Rush Lane Game Birds for Bob White quail info. Thank you, Walt. I appreciate that. So hopefully, I've forgotten already who was asking about Bob White. I lost track. Anyway, there's your suggestion. Rush Lane Game Birds. All right. Rhonda says, yeah, I have some that were born in June, and they're even half the size of my Coturnix quail that I sent to freezer camp 2 weeks ago. Yeah, you can't beat Coturnix for growth rates. Walt says the market for Bob Whites is selling to hunting clubs. Yep, that's true. There is a market for Bob Whites for hunting clubs. There's a little bit of quite a bit of work done actually to reintroduce them into the wild and build their wild populations up. Around here, Bob Whites just almost completely disappeared. When I was a kid, they were fairly common. We used to hunt them. But for the past about, I don't know, 15 years or so, you hardly ever see them. They're starting to make a little bit of a comeback now, but they're still nowhere near what they used to be. Walt goes on to say the name Python is a Colt firearms model. It is, you're right. Where are we at here? Jesse says, we are doing freezer camp for all Coturnix males this weekend. Got to make room for the next batch. Yeah, I'm probably going to be processing most of my males. Actually, probably won't do it this weekend. I'm gonna collect eggs for the next several days, and then I'll probably go ahead and process the extras, and then so I'll be down to, no, I don't necessarily need to make room. I just don't need that many birds. I mean, they're laying, I can't keep up with the eggs. I mean, they're laying way too many eggs right now. So I just need to reduce my feed cost and get it back down to a manageable size. Christopher says, have you ever used roll-out cages or you prefer single flat bottom cages? Yeah, I tried the roll-out cages for a while. I didn't really like them. And the biggest thing I didn't like about them is that everything I put in the cage ended up right at the front of the cage. So I put the feeder in the cage and it ends up right at the front of the cage because everything rolls on that roll-out cage. And they just didn't work that great for eggs. I mean, it's not that hard for me to open it up and reach in there and grab eggs. It's not that big a deal. So I didn't like them personally. William says, only have Bob White because of 4-H. We'll be doing Jumbo Browns or Pharaohs next. Yeah, I think you'll find a big difference there. You'll probably like them a lot better. Walt says, to get darker colored egg yolks, they need to eat free range. They probably do need to eat free range. Jesse says, for grit, we use parakeet grit from Walmart. That would work. Nothing wrong with that. And Carter says, the quail I have are about 6 to 7 weeks old. When should they lay? Anytime now. Give them a couple of weeks, just, be patient with it. They usually start laying right about 8 weeks old, but sometimes they're a little bit late, and it depends a little bit on how much light you have. You have to have at least about 14 hours a day to get them to lay pretty regularly. So just be patient, give them a little while. What you'll probably see is you'll go out there and then there'll be a couple of eggs in the hutch, and that may, for a couple of days, you'll get, a couple of eggs a day, 1 or 2, and then they may quit again for a week. And then they'll start back up, and then just boom, they'll start laying like crazy. That's usually what happens. Outside in Georgia, hello to you. Lauren Phelps says, Bob White males have a white line around the eyes, and the females have brown lines under the eyes. There we go. And Howard Kirchner says, sorry I'm late. That's okay. We're not taking roll. We're not going to mark you tardy or anything. Thanks for joining. I'm not sure. Gabriel says, Bow Hunt King thumbs up. All I see is a message retracted by Bow Hunt King, so I don't know what it was. All right, well, you guys kept me going for, well, it's been right about 56 minutes. And the chat has slowed down a little bit. And we got a couple more coming in. Let's see if I can get them answered real quick. All right, so Sir Widow's Peak says, I have questions. I recently hatched valley quail, and I've noticed that one keeps his head down. Okay, I guess the question is, why does he keep his head down? I mean, it could be any number of things that are causing that. It could just be the personality of the bird, maybe a little bit more timid than the other birds. They can have some kinds, some different kinds of issues. If it's just keeping its head down, I mean, that could be a sign. If it's not lethargic, if it's eating and drinking just fine and moving around the cage just fine, all that, it's probably nothing to worry about. But if there are other symptoms along with that, then it could be a vitamin deficiency. It could be an illness of some kind. It could be, there's any number of things that can affect your birds. So again, I can't diagnose that necessarily over the, over YouTube comments. It's just, I mean, there's just too many options, too many things that can happen to them. But I wouldn't worry about it too much as long as the bird's pretty active, moving around quite a bit, eating and drinking just fine. You might try to add some electrolytes and some vitamins to their water source because it could be like a thiamine deficiency, which is kind of what causes like Rednecked and stuff. That's not necessarily keeping their head down, but it can be related to those kinds of things. So you might try doing that, seeing if that helps a little bit. It's not going to hurt anything if it doesn't help. Rhonda says, I'm going to have my first litter of rabbits for this season, September 14th. It's getting cold here already. It's not getting cold here. I mean, we had a pretty nice cool spell come through. We're in the mid 80s right now, which is pretty nice for this time of year, but it's not getting cold yet. Randy Thompson, I said, try that again. Randy Thompson says, yay, I finally made it to a live chat. Well, you made it, but it's just about time to close this one up. We only got like 2-3 minutes left, but hey, thank you for joining either way. I appreciate that. Lady to Chain says hi from Texas. Well, thanks for joining. And Christopher says, I have Bob White now also. They are so slow to grow out. Can't wait to get my Coturnics. Yeah, Bob Whites are pretty slow growers, and the Coturnics way better for sure. All right. William says, as always, thank you for doing what you do here. Well, thank you for watching. I appreciate that. And God bless you too, Jesse. Lady says, have you ever had ducks? I had some ducks when I was a kid, but not recently. I've thought about adding some, but I haven't done it yet. Who knows? I may at some point. All right, guys, I got to get this wrapped up. We're running down on time. Got to go spend some time with the family. My wife should be home from work if she's not already. I didn't hear her come in, but I was pretty wrapped up in here talking to you guys. So we're going to have to get this one wrapped up. If I didn't get your comment answered, I'm apologize for that. Come back and leave it afterwards as a comment, not a chat, and I'll do my best to get that answered later on. But thank you guys for joining me tonight. I appreciate that. We'll see you next week. Should be back next week. We'll see you guys next week. God bless each and every one of you, and well, we'll see you next week. Good night.